He'll definitely finish his novel by 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Stefan De La Garza. Sorry.
2015 is the deadline. Speaking of Columbia, the editor is here, and we magically have some issues for sale. So you can sue me if you like what you hear. This is from an excerpt called Strange Bodies. I was amazingly beautiful as a child. Smoky green eyes the color of pine on an open campfire right before it burns, eyes you can't forget. And if I showed you a picture, you'd probably recognize me. I used to do a bit of modeling, and my mom said the picture was kind of famous because it went to the houses of at least 5,000 Sears catalog subscribers, or even more maybe. That was back in 1982. It was a holiday edition, and I was the one standing next to that Asian girl with pigtails in the toy section who's not doing a very good job looking coy as she flips fake eggs over the fake stove in the fake kitchen. Like I said, you'd recognize me. I mean, if your parents ever let you look through that garbage every Christmas and pick out the stuff you wanted, like my parents did. But the plastic kitchen must not have done very well because that year, item number 1003426 A, B, C, and D were discontinued. There's plenty of dirt to dig in families, and most of the time you don't have to do anything else but listen. I'll get a call from the nursing home when I'm 60 saying my mom is going in and out of consciousness and that I should come quick. And when I get there, I'll hold her hand and she'll be talking about the letters she got when my dad was in Vietnam, writing her something every single day, sometimes simply, holy shit, still here. But it didn't matter because every single thing he was thinking for over a year she held in her hands, and she'll say, I never loved your father. Not until he wrote those letters. I loved his words. They say the smell of death gets into everything, putrid and bitter, but kind of sweet, like the life we lead, no matter how much you wash, no matter how long, how much bleach, how much soap. You can't get that smell out. But there are two things you can do. One is to rub coffee grounds on everything, stuffing every pocket, smearing every seam, and the other thing you can do is just go out and bury your clothes. That'll do it. That's what I did. My mom kept the letters in a box in the kitchen in the first apartment, those North Carolina days so humid she just laid on her back in front of the open refrigerator, her feet in the crisper, 6 months pregnant. What a mistake everything turned out to be but those letters. There was so much she wanted to say, finally, to her husband when he got back, but the letters started changing. He didn't know if he'd make it anymore, telling her some of the worst of what he saw, and she'll start mumbling, quieting down, and I'll rub her arms, starting from the shoulders down to the hands to the fingers, repeating until the tears stop, and after just a couple days, she'll be lighter than a week's worth of groceries. A couple of years ago, scientists found a void in space a billion light years long, and if you were traveling at the speed of light for a billion years, you'd just reach the end, but you couldn't do that because you couldn't live that long. But they say there's a parallel universe right there on top of ours, and there might even be more universes, one for every choice we'll ever have. In one universe, I died at birth. In another universe, I swerved to the left, not the right, getting paralyzed. In another universe, I'll be 6 feet tall. In another universe, I'll never meet my wife, Patricia. In another universe, we'll have kids. And in another universe, my brother's still alive. Those letters, she'll say, those letters. For years, I'll cry in bathrooms and at the stove while making dinner, under sheets and in my dreams and everywhere in between, and she'll reach down to the bed, raise her empty hand. This is the only letter I saved, the only one. And I'll pluck the thin air, taking the invisible letter, putting it in my pocket. When my dad got back, he went through the house, pulled up cushions, pulled out every book, every dish until he found the box, and put the letters in a pot and took her outside, said, this is something you gotta do. My mom knew what he wanted, lit a match, and threw it in. He walked up and squirted lighter fluid on it, fire shooting up, nothing to stop it, watched it burn. She cried and cried, but he didn't even touch her, just crouched down and watched the flames until he said that's enough and took the hose and put out the fire. I remember how it looked, small pieces of paper floating on top of the water, but it was all gone, and we never talked about it again, like winter's silence about summer. It was October when my dad took me and my brother trout fishing, and all morning there was nothing there. We were just drifting with our lines, practicing our casting when tons of fish came out of nowhere. And my brother bent over the edge and it looked like he just dove in. My dad took his boots off, jumped over the edge, and didn't come out for probably 10 minutes, and I grabbed the shoulders of my brother's jacket as my dad doggy paddled, holding him right next to the boat. My brother pale, cold, and motionless, and I pulled as hard as I could until he flopped in on top of me. He was dead. I could smell it. My dad did CPR for 20 minutes right there until he couldn't even breathe. and then we rode back to the shore and carried him to the car. I held his feet and we laid him down in the back seat and didn't say a single word for an hour until we passed a cop. My brother never liked how beautiful I was, somehow always picking fights right before my mom was going to take me to a shoot, and I'd probably end up with a bruise on my jaw or a black eye or a patch of hair missing from my head, and my mom would always say, "You boys," and then she'd say, "I guess I'll just go grocery shopping." My brother and I were always fighting, or maybe I should say my brother was always fighting me. And I remember one time when my parents weren't around, I ate the last pancake my mom left warming in the oven, and he held me down on the kitchen floor and said, "You think pretty people need more food than everyone else?" And I grunted what might have been a maybe, and he cut me right below the eye. Sears never returned our phone calls after that. I pushed the clothes I wore that day fishing deep into my closet, but every day after that, they just started smelling more and more until my dad came into my room weeks later and said, "Find whatever died in here and clean it," and I knew what it was. I put the clothes in a garbage bag and tied it tight and waited until the ground was soft enough, and in April I went through the woods behind our house, dug a hole, and pulled the clothes out, coughing and gagging from the air in that bloated bag. It stank so bad, laying the clothes out just as if I were wearing them, and buried everything, first putting a note in the pocket and a cross in the dirt, but in a parallel universe none of this ever happened anyways. Thank you.